Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've just finished going over the rundown of the Big Ten as we prepare for the new era of college football to begin this season. We also talked about a bunch of NFL quarterback news, talking about the rookie quarterback performances in week 2 of the preseason, as well as talking about 2 quarterbacks that were named the week 1 starter for their respective teams. In this segment, we are continuing our series talking about every single NFL team, previewing them for the NFL Week 1, as we are almost done. Can you believe it? The NFL season is right around the corner. We have 6 more teams left, including this one, the Denver Broncos. We, as always, are going to start off talking about their offseason, their draft, any front office decisions that were made, see if we can give them a grade based on what they did, before taking a break and coming back with a record prediction for them. But today we are talking about the Denver Broncos. And before we get into that, though, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat button. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to talk about the Denver Broncos here today. Their offseason has been one that has been really heavily criticized, and for good reason. Now, we've seen with what Bo Nix has been able to do in these first 2 weeks of the preseason, at least for me, some of that criticism wear down a little bit. But that's not to say it was a good offseason by any stretch of the imagination at all. And with the Broncos this offseason, I think we have to start with Russell Wilson, right? And this story goes back just a couple years ago. They make the trade for, at the time, one of the top quarterbacks in the league, Russell Wilson. And it's all downhill from there. They give up 5 first and second round picks, as well as Drew Lock, a couple of players, including Noah Fant as well, to go and get Russell Wilson. Then they immediately sign him to a massive extension. That was just 2 years ago. They also brought in a head coach. That went poorly. They bring in Sean Payton as well last season, trading a first and a second for the coach from the Saints, getting a third in return for that. And Sean Payton gives up on Russell Wilson after just over half a season. Now, was that the right move? Probably. But it comes with consequences in the short term, especially a team that already is struggling immensely in the short term. There's almost no positives in the short term for them. They have to eat $85 million of dead cap space. That is a ridiculously large number. $50 million of dead cap this season, $30 million of dead cap next season. That is not a number that normally happens. When we talked about quarterback contracts earlier this offseason, do you feel comfortable paying a quarterback 20% of your cap? Well, the Broncos are doing that this season. They're paying Russell Wilson 20% of their cap to play for the Steelers. That is a ridiculous statement to say, and it's not something we're ever going to. I'm not going to say ever. It's not something we will most likely ever see again in the history of the National Football League. So this is the situation we're at with the Broncos. Already a gloom situation. Let's see what they do to fix it. Sean Payton is here for a second year. He's one of the best coaches in the history of the NFL. He has a plan. So let's start with the draft. Here's what they do. With their 12th overall pick, their first round pick, they draft Bo Nix. And what an interesting decision there. I am not a Bo Nix fan. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I am a Bo Nix fan. What he has done in the preseason has impressed me. It hasn't impressed me enough to make me believe in him for this season. He has been incredibly efficient on incredibly safe throws. He threw, when we talked about this in our first segment here, he only threw 2 passes over 10 yards all of last game. He threw 9 passes, only 2 of them were past that 10-yard mark. And that's not something that I expect someone to throw every single ball past 10 yards down the field. But I expect someone, especially in preseason, to take chances. Now, he most likely has won the starting spot this preseason. He started off as the third string, behind guys like Jared Stidham and Zach Wilson. That is not a good look originally. I don't really believe in Bo Nix, and call me a hater, but he needs to prove it to me. He can't just have one incredibly efficient year in college after, what he did at Auburn and make me change my mind about him. Oregon was a much better situation. He had a lot more talent around him. The offensive line was great. He's not stepping into that situation in Denver. It's probably going to be a mess. But talking about the rest of the draft there, like I said, they don't have too many picks because of the Russell Wilson and Sean Payton trades. But in the 4th round, they went in and got speedy wide receiver Troy Franklin out of Oregon, teammate of Bo Nix. He's currently sitting as about wide receiver 6 on the depth chart, and I really like that pick. I think he's a guy that could make an impact if he gets on the field. Now, Denver isn't particularly deep at any position, really, period. But wide receiver is by far the position that they're deepest at. You want to talk about a team that has some promising guys there. Courtland Sutton, someone that has unfortunately been plagued with bad quarterback play his entire career, is an incredible jump ball artist, maybe one of the best in the leagues. You have Tim Patrick, who has been very unlucky with injuries. The last 2 seasons, he has missed because of injury. He is a very talented receiver. I'm curious to see how he does when he finally gets back to full speed. They traded away Jerry Jeudy to the Browns. That's fine, whatever. You have Marvin Mims, speedster, made it to the Pro Bowl last year as a returner. We talked about Troy Franklin. They bring in Josh Reynolds, who has his moments. He obviously didn't have the greatest game in the last time we saw him out in the playoffs with the Lions, but he has his moments, and he is currently slotted as that wide receiver 3 for them. But outside of that wide receiver room, they've got just about nothing. They have Pat Surtain, one of the best corners in the league. That's it on defense. And it's a shame because this is a team that before last season was one of the best. Well, that's what they were known for, defense. The offense might not be there, but you can rely on the defense. They were the 30th best team in the league against the pass. They were the 20th best team in the league, 19th best team in the league against the run. This is not a team that made major improvements to the defense. This is a defense that is going to continue to struggle. I don't expect Pat Surtain to be on the team after the trade deadline. Honestly, I'm shocked he made it past the trade deadline this year. They cut star safety and fan favorite Justin Simmons, who now earlier last week signed a 1-year deal with the Atlanta Falcons, and he's a great player. A lot of their moves don't make sense to me, and there's not really another way to put it. I don't agree with what they're doing, and I know they're in a tough spot. I know it's kind of unfair for me to judge them on the same playing field as a team that didn't throw 20% of their cap space to the Wolves, right? But you have to. This is a decision that they made. It's something they have to deal with, and they had to hit that reset button somehow. I'm giving the Denver Broncos an F for their offseason. I don't think there was a single move that I can sit here and highlight and say, hey, you know what? I like what you did there, Denver Broncos. I think that is going to be a big piece of your future. And maybe I could be way off on Bo Nix, but nothing he's done has really stuck out to me and impressed me. I'm giving them an F. They're the worst offseason, I think, in football. And again, a lot of this does ride on Bo Nix, so maybe I'm being unfair. But he needs to prove something to me, and his highly efficient performances in the preseason aren't doing it. So yeah, an F for them. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to go through all 18 weeks, all 17 games of the Denver Broncos season, give them a record prediction, see if they can get past that 5.5 win mark that Vegas has set for them, see if we hit that over or under, as well as anything else that's going on around the world of the Denver Broncos. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just went over the Denver Broncos offseason. I gave them an F. Not really a fan of any move that they made this offseason, although they are in quite the pickle with the whole Russell Wilson situation. Before we get into the schedule prediction for the Denver Broncos, we are remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. Either of those things should have a message pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to finish off our show today going over the Denver Broncos schedule. The Denver Broncos, as I alluded to in the last segment here, I am not a fan of. I think they have the worst quarterback situation in the league, maybe just ahead of the Vikings, actually, after everything that's been going on over there. But I do think they have the worst quarterback situation in the league currently. The backup options to a guy I don't believe in Bo Nix, are Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham. Not a great situation to be in. But we'll see if they can beat the Vegas line set for them. That is at 5.5 wins. The Denver Broncos start off their season on the road in Seattle, reminiscent of just 2 years ago when they went in there with first-year Bronco quarterback Russell Wilson and lost. And I think we're going to have the same result this year. The Broncos head into Seattle and lose in Week 1. Week 2, home opener, Monday Night Football, taking on Russell Wilson, maybe, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback in this. The Steelers also have an interesting quarterback situation to decide between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. I think Russell Wilson will be the starter, but based on this preseason, I think they're pretty much neck and neck, and I don't know who will start. So for now, we're going to say it's a Russell Wilson revenge game. I do think the Broncos win this game, though, because revenge just isn't in the heart of Russell Wilson. It never has been, right? It just not something he believes in. Broncos improve to 1-1 on the year. Then they take a road trip down to Florida, take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That one's not going to end well for them either. The Bucs win this game, and the Broncos fall to 1-2 on the year. Then they get Aaron Rodgers and former head coach taking on the Jets in MetLife Stadium. The Broncos lose that game as well. They fall to 1-3 on the year. Then they get a couple of home games against a couple of home games against a couple of division opponents. Starting off at home against those Vegas Raiders and just named starting quarterback Gardner Minshew. I do think the Raiders are going to lose this game, although I think this is going to be a very tight one. The Broncos improve to 2-3 on the year. Then they get the Chargers. Justin Herbert should be back. He practiced for the first time since that ankle injury. This is at home as well. I'm giving this win to the Broncos. They get back up to 500 after 6 weeks at 3-3. Then we get a fun one. Sean Payton going back down to New Orleans to take on his former team, the New Orleans Saints. The Broncos are going to win this. This is the game that Sean Payton is going to coach his heart out on. I think Sean Payton is the X factor for this game, and I think the Broncos win it in primetime. They improve to 4-3. Who would have thunk it? Broncos over 500, 4-3 on the year. Solid place to be in. Then they host the Panthers, and again, This is a game I think could go either way, but they're coming off a 3-game win streak, a big high. I think the Panthers knock them down a peg. They lose to the Panthers here and fall to 4-4. Doesn't get any easier from there. Halfway through the season, basically they are 4-4. They get a bunch of really solid teams down the stretch. They have to take on the Ravens. They have to take on the Chiefs. They have to take on the Falcons. They still have to take on the division a couple more times. They have to take on the Bengals and the Browns as well. It's not easy at all. There's no good way to get this done. But they get the Chiefs twice. I forgot, division opponent here. But after the Panthers loss, they go on the road to Baltimore, take on the Ravens. Not a very good bounce back situation. They fall to 4-5 on the year through 9 weeks. Then they get their first game against the Chiefs, this one on the road in Arrowhead. Not a shot in the world the Broncos are winning this one. Chiefs have had a stranglehold against the Broncos. I believe the Broncos have only won one game in the last 6 or 7 years against the Chiefs, and that happened last season. But the Chiefs win this game in Arrowhead, and the Broncos fall to 4-6. Then they get the Falcons. Kirk Cousins and the Falcons. The Justin Simmons return to Denver. This is going to be a good moment for Broncos fans, but I think the Falcons will win this one. They fall to 4-7. Then they get the Raiders again, a team they beat before. I think it goes differently this time. It is in Vegas, and I don't think the Broncos are going to get lucky twice in a row. They fall now through 12 weeks to 4-8. Not a good spot to be in. After a 3-game win streak, they lose 5 in a row. And then they get the Browns at home before their bye. And I do think they win this game. The Browns are a team that I think are going to be really up and down, and I think the Broncos will be able to take advantage of that and win that game, improve to 5-8 on the year. Then they get a bye, a late bye for this team, a much needed bye as they get ready for the final stretch of the season. It's not the most difficult, but you are going to take on 2 of the top teams in the AFC, in the Bengals and the Chiefs down the stretch here. They get the Colts off of a bye. Anthony Richardson comes in to Denver in the Battle of the Horse, and I think the Colts are going to win this one. Denver falls to 5-9 on the year. Then on the road at the Chargers, division opponent, they split that season series with the Chargers, lose this one on the road, fall to 5-10. Last 2 games of the season, real tough. At this point, they've been eliminated from playoff contention. They get the Bengals and the Chiefs. The Bengals on the road. Joe Burrow, I think, is going to slice and dice up this defense that has been one of the worst against the pass in the entirety of football. The Bengals are going to win this game. Broncos fall to 5-11. Then they get the Chiefs and their season, and that is not a good draw. The Chiefs are here to lock up that number 1 overall seed in the AFC. They need to play their starters for this game. They win this game, and the Broncos fall to 5-12 on the year as a whole. Not a very good season. I don't know what people are expecting. Now, I will say, I made this list with in mind that I don't believe in Bo Nix. Bo Nix is not a guy that I'm going to sit here and defend. This is a Broncos team that at its lowest could win 3 games. At its peak, I give them 6, maybe 7. Now, I give them 5 here. I do think there's a couple of games that could go either way, specifically the Panthers, the Steelers, the Browns. One of those Chiefs games, I bet you, will be close, as well as the Colts games. Those are 5 games that I think could go either way. About half of those games, I have them winning. If you flip-flop all those games that I had, the ones that I think could be close, they go 6-11. So it's not that big of a difference from what I have right now. But Keep in mind that this is a team that is coached by Sean Payton, one of the best coaches in the history of the NFL. There is a lot of wiggle room here for this team to be better than I expect, than a lot of people expect. I am saying they stay under that 5.5 line, finish 5-12 on the year. But let me know what you think of this Broncos team. What do you think Bo Nix is going to do in his rookie season? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. As always, I appreciate everybody so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow, going over the Raiders, going over the the Big 12 for college football, as well as any other major breaking news from around the world of sports. Tune back in, same time, same place tomorrow. I will see you then. Have a good one. Bye-bye.